Hello and welcome back to NoBS. Today we return to talking about statue vandalism. That's right. Statues have been going down across the country, and that's been happening because of these terrible incidents. First, it started with a bad arrest gone wrong in Minneapolis. Then a similar kind of death happened in Atlanta, and these things have sparked riots and controversy across the country. Basically, because the press and the Hollywood elites and these liberals are all race baiting the situation, even though those initial incidents didn't actually have racism, at least not proven racism. It was just different races happened to be involved, and that's resulted in riots and demonstrations across the country. And eventually, now we're tearing down statues. First, the statues that were coming down had some kind of relation to things. They had people taking down statues related to the Civil War, people that did some sorts of bad things many years ago that were related to race. But now things have gone past that, and almost every statue is under fire. Like any statue can go down. And specifically, today we're talking about Christopher Columbus statues. Christopher Columbus, of course, was famous for discovering America and being this first kind of hardcore explorer who came to this continent before there was even advanced civilizations here. Sure, there were Native Americans and other kinds of groups growing in small tribes and stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But for the most part, the European Western world had not discovered Americas until Columbus came. And that's what kind of has created this controversy now. People are taking down Columbus statues saying he was a racist, saying he murdered all these people and caused the genocide of the natives and all that kind of stuff. That's highly exaggerated and mostly untrue. He wasn't literally trying to kill all the natives. In fact, he tried to trade with them and live alongside them. But sure, there were some wars in the day too. They had to fight a few people, but usually it was mutual. Like people were attacking on both sides. So to put that all on Christopher Columbus is kind of misrepresenting and misinterpreting the story. Now, for today's story, we're also talking about South Park, of course. South Park gets involved in this story because they actually had a Christopher Columbus episode about 3 years ago, and I would say they predicted what's going on right now. Now, this Christopher Columbus hate actually isn't brand new. It's just kind of been reinvigorated and reapplied because of current situations like we talked about. And now what's happened is Christopher Columbus is offensive again, and I think this South Park episode predicted a lot of things that are going on now. They had this whole episode where Randy originally loved Christopher Columbus, and in the story, it was South Park and Randy Marsh. He dressed up as Columbus in the past. And what happened was that got him in trouble in the present because, of all this modern PC sensibilities. Christopher Columbus is under fire now. He's offensive now, according to leftists. And that caused Randy to kind of course correct. And basically, the story goes Randy then tries to prove he's Native American. He takes a DNA test to kind of get himself on the other side. And then he also overcompensates and goes super anti-Columbus and even gets to a point where he starts calling people in Columbus, Ohio, which is a city named after this historical figure. And he actually just goes and yells at people in Columbus. It's a really funny scene. Like he just gets real hardcore saying, "Hey, what's up, you racist? Why are you so racist? Change your town's name." And that sounds really funny, but that's actually what's happening in the present in some ways. Now, this article or this Google search can show you right away. If you just do a search on Google for Columbus, the news and the top article that pops up is people talking about renaming Columbus, Ohio. Now, granted, this is kind of a joke story because they're talking about naming it Flavor Town now, which is a kind of title and word that comes from this Guy Fieri cooking show. Guy Fieri is in this picture right here. He's a pretty eccentric kind of food show host. Very funny guy, very entertaining. Good shows, by the way, but the fact that they're trying to rename the town is just the ridiculous part. Flavor Town suggestion is just, I think, a joke thing. Like it's not a serious suggestion, but it goes to show that people are coming after this title. Like they do want to rename Columbus, Ohio, which is exactly what happened in South Park. Now, this is like them predicting the future again, in my opinion. And that's why I want to go over this episode again now and kind of give you some more details, talk things through, and just get some of the jokes and stuff out there. And for a more full explanation of this episode, I actually reviewed this episode when it came out. I have a full video on it, which I'll link below so you could catch up on like the full breakdown from that episode when it came out in 2017. But now we're going to go over it again with this new lens and relation into what's going on. So this wiki says the episode is called Holiday Special. It's the third from the 21st season. It appeared on Comedy Central on September 27th, 2017. The episode parodies self victimization via Native American hardships and trends toward opposition towards Columbus Day. So it's got this anti Columbus Day storyline. I think obviously South Park isn't going to be like against that. They're kind of making fun of that. They're mocking that. And then it also gets into this whole victimhood thing, people wanting to be victims, taking DNA tests and stuff like that too. So let's read on. Chaos breaks out among the children at school in response to the cancellation of the day off on Columbus Day due to an anti-Columbus Day campaign by Randy Marsh. Kyle and Stan confront him with photos documenting how Randy himself has dressed as Columbus many times throughout his life, from his wedding to as recently as 2013. This leads to depression for Randy, who says he feels indigenous, confusing the term with indignant. Randy sees a commercial for a genealogy company called DNA and Me, which includes testimonials from Caucasians who came to identify as victims after discovering they harbored trace amounts of DNA of historically oppressed ethnic groups. Randy decides to have the DNA in his saliva tested, though he pays a Native American man to French kiss him to ensure the test results indicate that he has Native American DNA. Disguising his voice, Kenny makes a call to Peter Goltman, the school official who canceled the holiday, to get him to search the internet for Randy's past photos, but Goltman refuses as he believes everything on the internet is fake news. Okay, great. Good introduction there. First, we got the Columbus Day, the anti-Columbus Day campaign from Randy Marsh, which becomes very ironic and hypocritical when the kids point out that Randy was pro-Columbus before. And this kind of points out to the fact that these people that sometimes lash out at things were in fact fans of them before. This happens a lot, especially with leftists. Randy Marsh is typically mocking liberals in a lot of episodes. He has these kind of left ideas. He's kind of a hippie sometimes. He's pro like rock and roll and entertainment stuff too. So this is them kind of doing that projection move that a lot of leftists do. And then that leads to him saying indigenous in the wrong way, which is funny. And then we get to these DNA tests, which is another trend. This is something we've talked about on the show here in a number of ways too. I actually took my own DNA test a few months back, and that was following a couple of other DNA test videos which we covered, which kind of have similar themes. Like a lot of times, basically what happens is a lot of these girls, these kind of young girls on YouTube, maybe they're 20-year-old or something like that, mid-20s, early 20s, and they get kind of wrapped up in this social justice warrior ideology. They're probably not mostly political, but that tends to make them lean left. They kind of think the left is the norm. That's what people that aren't that political think because they just see it all over the news. And basically these girls have these tests and they go wrong for a number of ways. Now, the first test wasn't even a YouTuber. We can actually talk about Elizabeth Warren. That's a politician who was previously running for president. She announced her DNA test for similar reasons last year because she had actually claimed she was Native American her whole life. She used it to get jobs, to get into college, to get herself voted and into elected office. And it turned out she just had a very small trace amount of Native American DNA, which is something probably most Americans would have, like a small fraction of percent just from being in this area, like someone gonna happen to be Native. And that's the thing that Warren just chose to share that test. And it's happened on YouTube a number of times too, but the YouTube ones kind of go worse because they're vlogging and they record themselves and then we see them react. Like, for example, one time there was this black girl who found out she was from Europe and that totally threw her off and she was really mad that she was part white. And the same kind of thing happened with a couple of white girls who were kind of upset that they were too white. They wanted to be part minority, part victim, which is what they're going into with this sort of thing on South Park. South Park focuses more on being part Native American, but being part minority is part of it too. The leftists have this kind of identity politics way of dealing with themselves and dealing with the world, and they just want that preferential. They think being a minority makes them better and stronger and whatever, and we know it's just plain wrong. Finally, this section makes a fake news reference, which is something that's come up for a long time, mostly since Trump made the term very popular around 2015, 2016, and this episode came out shortly after that, about a year later. As Randy desperately tries to gather and dispose of his previous Columbus costumes, he is repeatedly visited by the Native American man he kissed, who has fallen in love with him. Randy rebuffs him, but during the man's second visit, a jogger films Randy covered in the Columbus costumes as he's been gathering, angrily kicking the Native American off his property. The boys later show this video to Goltman. Now, this is the most funny clip and shot of the episode. It's a really funny shot. I'll put it on the screen here. Basically, Randy was getting ready to throw out his Columbus gear. He had like a bunch of costumes, and then he happens to see the Native American at his door. He's trying to tell him to leave, and then it ends up being like a bad scene where he's wearing the Columbus stuff, and he's like holding a cross and everything, and he's like kicking the Indian guy away who's fallen in love with him. And it's just really funny because a jogger walks by and takes a picture, and you know that's going to be on the internet. Randy even says, "Don't post that" at this point. It's like a really funny thing. I think he runs after the guy, and that kind of just represents just a great joke for the episode, and then also a great moment talking about how social media has become so influential. Like anyone can get caught doing something, and then it goes on the internet, and then your life can be over. I mean, this is what they're hinting at. It doesn't necessarily go down that whole road in this episode, but it's just a funny thing to mention because that's something that's still going on a lot to this day. Actually, it's probably even worse. When Randy is informed by the DNA&Me staff of an irregularity, they take a second anal swab from him in order to obtain more accurate results. He is informed that his DNA most closely matches Caucasian British Persian and that 2.8% of it is Neanderthal, which crossbred with modern Homo sapiens. And enraged, Randy interprets this to mean that his ancestors were abused and eradicated by the ancestors of the DNA&Me staff. Returning home, Andy is confronted by Goltman, whom he punches for oppressing his ancestors, but the Native American man also appears and implores Randy to cease his pretense and face who he really is. Randy realizes that playing the victim has not solved his problems. At school, he announces that the school's calendar committee has reinstated the day off, which has been redesigned as Indigenous Peoples Day. Continuing to express belief that the word indigenous refers to negative feelings, he says that this holiday will be for people to express such feelings, but the assembled crowd, offended at his ignorance, trades insults with Randy before gradually dispersing. So this wraps things up. This is another real world reference. You know, Indigenous Peoples Day is something they're trying to change from Columbus Day. Other thing worth noting is like the kids really just get involved in the beginning because they just want that day off of school. Like Columbus Day is just like the one day you have off in that month. I think it's September. So the kids really just care about that. Randy is caring about something else. He's trying to act woke and like pro-leftist, trying to get this whole like, oh, victimhood mentality, going after the Columbus people. Like I mentioned earlier, he calls people in Columbus and goes after them in a very hilarious scene. And I think this is all relative. It makes sense now. It's good to talk about it again and see how it's coming back up in light of these recent events and light of this whole drama going on in America, probably happening because we're on the tail end of this pandemic that's kind of having a possible second wave now. People are home, people are bored, they're going to these demonstrations and they're just looking for things to complain about. So now it's Christopher Columbus. Who knows what else is going to go down? We've seen statues of Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, all kinds of American heroes and icons, and I think it really needs to stop. That about wraps things up. I hope you guys enjoyed today's South Park Explained video. Also, make sure you comment your thoughts on everything below. Tell me what you think about this show, this episode, this Columbus Day reference, this Indigenous People Day stuff, and all of that. Comment it all below. Also, hit the like button to get this video shared, and until next time, you have a great day. Hey guys, I wanted to take a quick moment to tell you about our new second channel. NoBS News has been really ramping up recently. We've got over 10,000 subscribers now, and it's growing each and every day. This is a new extra channel where I can give you guys more content, which includes extra videos, sometimes streams, sometimes other fun things too, clip shows, whatever you like. NoBS News is going to have it there for you. So make sure you check it out by either searching NoBS News on YouTube or clicking the link below this video. Thanks for your time. Have a good one.